They say history began 5,000 years ago, with the rise of cities, writing, organized religion. The moment humans finally stepped into the light of civilization. But what if that wasn't the beginning? What if it was a reboot? For thousands of years, the world's deserts, jungles, and ocean floors have hidden secrets. Too old, too complex, too advanced to fit into the textbooks. In 1994, in the hills of southeastern Turkey, archaeologists unearthed a place called Göbekli Tepe. Massive carved stones, arranged in precise circles, animal engravings, ritual symbolism, 12,000 years old. That's 7,000 years before the pyramids, before Stonehenge, before writing, before any known civilization. And someone, some group, had already mastered architecture, astronomy, and spiritual design. This was not supposed to exist. Yet there it was, buried under layers of earth, as if intentionally hidden, as if someone didn't want it remembered. And Göbekli Tepe is just the beginning. Off the coasts of Japan, India, and Cuba, structures lie underwater, mysterious, megalithic, forgotten. Flood myths echo across cultures, tales of destruction, of lost knowledge, of civilizations wiped clean. So the question isn't just, did we miss a chapter in history? It's, was there another book entirely before ours began? This is the story of the civilization that may have existed before memory, before history, before the world we thought we knew. A people whose achievements were drowned, buried, and scattered across ruins that no one can explain. And now, after 12,000 years, their whispers are beginning to surface. In the dry hills of southeastern Turkey, just outside the ancient city of Şanlıurfa, lies a place that rewrote human history. Its name is Göbekli Tepe, the Potbelly Hill. To the untrained eye, it looked like nothing. A mound of dust, a hill like any other. But in 1994, archaeologist Klaus Schmidt noticed something different. Buried beneath that hill were massive T-shaped pillars, some towering over 16 feet high, carved with lions, scorpions, snakes, and vultures, in a style no one had ever seen before. And then came the shock. Radiocarbon dating put the site at 11,600 years old. That's 7,000 years older than the Great Pyramid, older than Stonehenge, older than agriculture, writing, pottery, older than what we call civilization itself. According to every timeline we've ever taught, this should not exist, because at that point in history humans were still hunter-gatherers, nomadic, no cities, no temples, no construction techniques. They weren't supposed to organize, design, and erect 50-ton stones in concentric circles, aligned with astronomical precision. But someone did. And not just once. Over and over. Göbekli Tepe contains at least 20 circular enclosures, only a few of which have been excavated. Each one carefully planned, each one pointing to a completely different understanding of ancient humans. And then, they buried it. Yes, intentionally. The entire site was filled in with rubble and dirt around 8,000 BCE, preserved like a time capsule. But why would a civilization go to such lengths to erase its own legacy? Was it ritual? Was it protection? Or was it a warning? Göbekli Tepe challenges everything we think we know about the Stone Age. It suggests not only that advanced culture existed before agriculture, but that it had spiritual and architectural complexity far ahead of its time. And if something this advanced existed 12,000 years ago, what else have we lost? What else lies buried beneath the sands, forgotten beneath the seas? Because Göbekli Tepe wasn't just a temple. It was a signal, a monument left by a people who may have known more than we can comprehend. A fingerprint from a world that lived and died before history began recording. And it begs the question, was this the birthplace of civilization, or the grave of one that came before? Beneath the ocean's surface off forgotten coastlines lie ruins that shouldn't be there, drowned in silence, buried beneath centuries of sand and sea. Take Dwarka off the coast of India. In 2001, marine archaeologists scanning the Gulf of Khambhat stumbled upon something astonishing. Geometric stone formations, long straight walls, grids that looked like roads all lying 120 feet below the surface. Carbon dating of materials found nearby suggested human activity as far back as 9,500 years ago. That would make Dwarka older than Mesopotamia, older than the Indus Valley. Mainstream scholars were skeptical. Some called it a natural formation, but others saw evidence of city planning, of engineering, of intention. And it wasn't alone. Across the world, off the coast of Japan's Yonaguni Island, divers discovered what looked like a giant stone staircase rising out of the deep. Massive platforms, sharp right angles, monumental steps carved into the bedrock. Was it nature, erosion, or something built? Some geologists insisted the shapes were natural, fractured by tectonic forces, but many divers, including marine geologist Masaki Kimura, disagreed. He believed humans carved these forms more than 10,000 years ago, before rising seas swallowed them whole. And off the coast of Cuba, sonar scans in the early 2000s revealed symmetrical formations resembling pyramids and roads, nearly 2,000 feet underwater. No one has been able to return and confirm it. But the pattern is clear. The sea holds secrets. At the end of the last ice age, around 11,000 years ago, sea levels rose by over 400 feet, flooding coastlines, erasing entire shorelines. And if advanced human settlements had been built near the water, as most are today, they're now underwater, forgotten. Cities, ports, monuments, civilizations drowned before we ever wrote them down. These ruins may not all be what they seem. Some may be natural, others may remain forever unproven. But even their possibility forces us to reconsider our timelines. Because if humans were building monumental structures before the sea reclaimed them, then maybe we're only seeing the tip of a much deeper history. A history where humanity rose before and fell. Not once, but maybe more than once. It doesn't matter where you look. Egypt, Mexico, Mesopotamia, or Cambodia. The echoes are the same. Massive stone pyramids, stories of a great flood, and symbols that whisper of the stars. Let's start with the structures. The Great Pyramid of Giza, the stepped pyramids of Teotihuacan, the ziggurats of Sumer, the temples of Angkor Wat, thousands of miles apart. Different materials, different languages, no contact, and yet they rise in the same shape, wide at the base, narrow at the top, reaching skyward. Why? Some say it's coincidence, that the pyramid is simply the most stable structure to build tall with stone. But coincidence doesn't explain the symbolic connections. In ancient Egypt, pyramids were gateways to the afterlife. In Mesoamerica, they were temples aligned with the heavens. In Cambodia, the Angkor complex was built to mirror the stars, an earthly reflection of the divine. And then, there are the myths. The story of a great flood appears in nearly every ancient culture. The Epic of Gilgamesh from Mesopotamia, the story of Nu'u in Hawaiian tradition, Manu and the Great Boat in India, Deucalion and Pyrrha in Greek myth, and of course, Noah's Ark in the Bible. Cultures that had no contact, separated by oceans, all speaking of a time when the world was washed away, and a few survivors began anew. Why? Could these stories be shared memory? Or are they the remnants of something real, a cataclysm that nearly ended the human story? Now, consider the stars. In Egypt, the pyramids are aligned with Orion's belt, a celestial triad matching the Giza layout. In Mexico, the pyramids of Teotihuacan echo similar constellational alignments. The same in ancient China, in Nabta Playa, even in Angkor. The same 3 stars, again and again. Is this simply reverence for the night sky? Or a code? A shared language of the cosmos? This is where it gets uncomfortable. Because the deeper you look, the more it feels like these cultures weren't isolated, but connected. Not by trade, but by memory. Some researchers call it the mother culture theory, the idea that a single advanced civilization once seeded knowledge across the ancient world before vanishing beneath history's sands. It sounds like science fiction. But then again, so does a 12,000-year-old stone temple or a city beneath the sea. Maybe they weren't trying to impress the gods. Maybe they were trying to preserve a message, because for all our maps and books and tools, it seems the ancients already knew something we've forgotten. History is written by the victors. But what if the real story was buried, not by war, but by time? And what if the evidence that could rewrite everything is already in plain sight? Let's talk about names they don't teach in school. Graham Hancock, Randall Carlson, Dr. Robert Schoch. Researchers, geologists, investigative authors, all asking the same dangerous question. What if we're wrong about human history? Not just wrong, but deeply wrong. Take the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, a theory that around 12,800 years ago, Earth was struck by fragments of a comet, triggering massive floods, fires, and a sudden return to Ice Age conditions. It coincides eerily with the disappearance of megafauna and the abrupt collapse of early cultures. Graham Hancock suggests this cataclysm didn't just wipe out animals. It erased an entire advanced civilization. Not aliens, not magic, but humans, just like us, architects, astronomers, engineers, crushed beneath rising seas and falling skies. And the survivors? They passed their memories down in myths, monuments, and star maps. Randall Carlson, a geological expert, points to strange erosion patterns on sacred sites, like the Sphinx. He argues the weathering isn't from wind, but water. Ancient catastrophic flooding, long before dynastic Egypt. Mainstream archaeologists call these ideas pseudoscience. Why? Because if these theories are right, everything shifts. The academic timelines, the textbooks, the story we teach our children about who we are. And history, like any institution, resists change. But what if the evidence doesn't lie? Tool marks on stone that copper chisels couldn't have made. Oral traditions from isolated tribes describing skyfire, floods, and cities swallowed by the ocean. Göbekli Tepe, a megalithic masterpiece older than agriculture itself, intentionally buried, as if someone wanted it hidden. That's not fringe. That's fact. So we have to ask, are we protecting the truth of history? Or are we protecting a version of it that's safe, clean, and convenient? Because every time someone uncovers something that doesn't fit the narrative, it gets labeled a hoax, a myth, a mistake. But what if those outliers are breadcrumbs, signs of a story we once knew, but forgot, or were made to forget? Maybe the past isn't just a linear march from caves to cities. Maybe it's a circle, where civilizations rise, fall, and sometimes leave behind clues carved in stone. The question isn't just what happened. It's why we're not allowed to ask. What happens to a civilization when it falls? Not to war or conquest, but to water, fire, and time. If there truly was a society before our known history, one that mapped the stars, carved the stones, and spoke to the skies, then what does it say about us, that we don't remember them? Or worse, that we forgot they ever existed? Human knowledge is not indestructible. It lives on paper, stone, and in stories, all of which can burn, erode, or vanish beneath the waves. If the comet theory is true, if a global cataclysm struck 12,000 years ago, it wouldn't have just destroyed cities. It would have erased memory itself. Libraries drowned, temples shattered, oral traditions scattered across continents, reshaped into myths and legends. How many Atlanteans were simply ancient engineers? How many flood myths were faded recollections of a real world-ending storm? And here's the haunting truth. We may already have the evidence, but it doesn't look like what we expect. We look for steel, machines, and skyscrapers. But an ancient people may have worked with stone, water, and the stars. They may have encoded knowledge in architecture, in alignments, in sacred geometry, all dismissed today as coincidence or superstition. We keep asking, where's the proof? But maybe we're standing on it. Maybe it's not just buried in the ground. It's buried in our assumptions. Because the biggest secret of a lost civilization might not be how advanced they were. It's that we've become so certain of our own progress. We forgot to consider that someone came before. And if history is a circle, if we're not the first to rise, then we must ask, what did they know that we don't? And when the next catastrophe comes, will anyone remember us? We like to believe we were the first to build, the first to dream, the first to rise from stone and sand and reach for the stars. But what if we weren't? What if long before our names filled history books, another civilization stood where now there is only silence? The ruins remain, weathered, sunken, half buried. The myths remain, scattered across continents like broken memories. And somewhere beneath it all, the truth waits. Not lost, just forgotten. Because maybe we're not the beginning of the story. Maybe we're the sequel. And the first civilization, still waiting to be remembered.